Thank you so much for joining us. I am joined today by the wonderful Dave Law, also known as Dave Law Art. Um, so, Dave, you've been a musician and an artist since I've known you, and which was in high school when we met, however many years ago. And you've been pursuing art full time for the last few years. So, do you want to give us a brief intro to yourself?
Oh,
bio?
Yeah, sure. I'm primarily a comic book artist, and I draw, I'll do graphic design and other illustrations too. But my true trade, or the thing that I'm most passionate about, definitely is telling stories through visual art. And it's always been something that I've enjoyed doing. I mean, like you said, my whole life I've been attracted to the comic book medium and music, and I feel like a lot of the times they go hand in hand, even though they don't always go well together. But they definitely, I think, have a similar energy behind both of them, and so I think that's probably what attracts me to them both. But yeah, like early on, when we knew each other, and mostly in school, I was primarily music. I think I liked the immediacy of it. You know, you can you get a couple guys together and you can bang out a couple power chords, and all of a sudden you've got this real high energy song, and everyone can have a good time and enjoy it. And like I said, the immediacy of music writing and the kind of live element of it was really powerful to me, and it still is. I still think very highly of those times doing live shows and everything. That's just a feeling you don't get anywhere else. But you know, as I got older, I had to get a job, and definitely my first job was like, I'm going to get this job so I can continue working on music, but I'm going to have this job to pay the bills. And it was like so many other people, it just kind of completely took over my life, and I suddenly found myself not doing any of the creative things that I loved. And I remember specifically in the office one day, someone was talking about a friend that played music, and I was like, oh yeah, I do too. And they looked at me like, what, you play music? Like, it was the most ridiculous thing that they could imagine. And I realized that I was like, man, I've really lost sight of who I am, because it's like, that is a real definer of me, that I'm someone who's creative and makes things. But I think that was like the first time when I kind of realized that I wasn't really on the path that I thought I was meant to be. And but it wasn't for many years later, still doing the same kind of job that I was doing, that Becky, my wife, came to me, and she's like, I can tell you're not happy, and I don't know if you're doing the right thing for yourself. And that was kind of weird, because I didn't even really think about that stuff. I was just kind of doing what I felt needed to be done, and I didn't think that I could stop, really. And she brought up that, well, maybe now's the time, because she had a pretty good job. She has a pretty good job, and we had saved a good amount. That maybe now's the time that you quit and you try to do this comic book thing that you've been wanting to do for so long. And
how many years ago was that?
That was 3 years ago.
Okay.
3 years ago. And I guess I should have also said that, right out of college, I had made the decision that I was going to be a comic book artist. But I went to a comic convention, and I had really thin skin at that time. I went to the comic convention with my portfolio, which was, I had made one comic book. And one comic book, I mean, it was like, maybe like 40 or 50 pages of drawings. And I expected to have this and just get a job, right? And, I maybe didn't have the gentlest of people critique it. And so I walked away with that just being like, oh, well, this is, I'm not going to do this. Like, my feelings got hurt too much. So I just decided that now is not the time, or maybe I'm not cut out for this. And so that was that, really. But it always kind of didn't feel right to me. And I could tell I was giving up when I really shouldn't have. And in hindsight, I know I was giving up too early. And because this is an art form that requires tons of practice, way more than 40 pages.
Right.
And, so anyways, fast forward, I think maybe 10 years. and time flies so fast. That's the crazy thing.
It does.
And Beck tells me, maybe now's the time to really give it an honest go, and not just like, and not just go to a publisher and go, here's my work, and they're like, oh, you're not quite there yet, and give up. Now, between then and now, the internet has completely changed how it is, and you don't need a publisher to make a book. There's tons of places that will print on demand or print small runs very inexpensively. You can put it online. You don't even have to print it. You can just do digitally. Webtoons is like...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, Webtoons is like this is huge right now, and it's just internet comics, and so the landscape has completely changed, and so this time around, I was like, I'm not gonna put my eggs in the basket in hopes that someone's gonna say, yeah, here's a job. I'm just gonna like do it, and I'm gonna self-publish, and I'm gonna try to make money on my own how I can, and it's been working out.
Yeah, nice. And shout out to your amazing wife, Becky, who I love. And she's like the most supportive person I know. And I love that she's been really supportive of everything you've done and kind of helped you push you in the right direction. So I think you're really lucky to have a supportive family.
I am. It was really touching to realize that I had picked someone to marry that was really honestly looking out for me, not just like looking out for me financially or making sure that we're, you're doing the standard stuff a husband needs to do, but like seeing emotionally that something wasn't quite right, and being able to realize what it was that changed that. And I've definitely realized the change once I made that career swap.
Yeah, and I talk about that a lot in my book and I think in many ways you're like the perfect example of what happens to so many artists who start out really artistic, in high school. You were so artistic in a band, drawing, when you and Becky got married, you drew those figures on the like programs, which were so amazing. I mean, I never really thought of you as a visual artist because I knew you just kind of did that for fun. But anyways, you were so creative, and then it just kind of went away when you were trying to do like the real world grind, what I think so many of us are told, that art has to be a hobby, and you had a child who's 10 now, which is crazy.
Almost 10, yeah.
So, and you were very responsible and you did all of those things. And so it's really nice to see that instead of having like going through some midlife crisis, you've had this opportunity to really pursue your art now full time. So have you seen that be a change in your just like as a whole person? Do you feel more complete now that you're able to really give your energy to that?
Yeah, and complete is a really good word for that. I mean, prior to, I wouldn't have said I was unhappy or anything, but there was something that was kind of, I could tell was missing. And like, just like I said, I didn't have that moment like I did where the girl was like, "Oh, you play music?" I can't imagine you ever playing music, but it's definitely that realization happens, and I'm not doing the stuff that I feel is the essence, like kind of like the essence of me. And I think most artists feel that way. If they're doing the thing that their soul just screams that they need to be making, and if you don't do that, there's like, and what it is, it's almost torturous. So now that I'm committed full time to doing it, it feels great, because you just know that there's nothing in your head that's like, well, if I spent a little more time on this, then I could have been something. Now you're just like, no, I'm just gonna do it. It's black. It turns a lot of things black and white, which is nice. It makes the decisions easy.
And then was it a choice to kind of pursue cartoon or, not animation, but like drawing over music, or was drawing always kind of your number one? Because again, and maybe it's just because I've always had a fascination with guitars and guitarists and music, but I always kind of thought music was your main thing. So I was a little surprised when and when I saw that you were going towards art instead of music. Was that a choice for you, or was that always kind of clear for you?
They were always side by side. I think I got into doing visual arts long before music, but music just took a forefront, especially when you're like in high school and college, and it's just I'm a social person, and it's so fantastic for that. And so like, I really fed into that, but I always knew that the actual life of a professional musician was not something that I really felt would work for me. I'm a homebody. I loved the music writing process, and I still do. I love making music. I love jamming or creating with other musicians, and like just that time. Honestly, the practicing for being in a band was like my favorite, and like the collaboration stuff that goes on. And the collaboration is the same kind of a collaboration that happens in comic books, but but it was always the creation. It was always the creation that I loved the most, and it always kind of made me. It was kind of like this weird tick whenever I was in a band and people would be like, okay, we should like think about how we're going to start touring, or what, like what kind of a commitment we're going to, because I just like, I don't want to spend months and months away from home,
Fair.
I want to have a family. I like to stay at home. I just like the things. I just knew that wasn't me, and that a touring musician or the lifestyle of a professional musician wasn't going to work for me, and the way I would want it to be. I don't know. I guess I maybe could have figured out a way to do that, but it just didn't. It didn't seem like, like I can look at the path that most comic book artists have to take, and I'm like, that's a path I'm comfortable walking down, even though it's an uncomfortable path. But the uncomfortable path for a musician is on top of it being very cutthroat, was not attractive to me. So I knew it was short lived. And kind of one of those things that I was going to do and enjoy. And if something came of it, like if someone happened to be at one of the shows we were playing at a local club or bar, that I would roll with it. But that never happened. So,
no. You have to work your ass off.
And so like the drawing, working on comic books, that kind of that always seemed really cool to me. Live wherever I want, tell these stories, draw, be creative, and go places when you have to. Like you definitely have to go to like conventions and everything, but that's fun. It's not like months and months on the road.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And you have done some collaborations. I was in California when you were releasing, or when you had a book signing anyways.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about some of your collaborations and what the projects that you're working on now?
Sure. I think the main one that I've been working on the longest is this book, Space Odditorium.
Yes. Nice.
And this one, this is a kind of a science fiction fantasy I'd say adventure, but it's kind of it's odd and weird and funny, So it's definitely meant to be kind of more of a tongue-in-cheek science fiction story. It's very little science.
Got it.
But it follows a girl who's raised in captivity by this mysterious alien race. And they raise her solely on 90s television sitcom shows. So she's got this real, kind of like vanilla teaching of how the world is. But on the flip side, they're also having her compete in these kind of these like death races, these intergalactic American Ninja Warrior type competitions where she fights robots and aliens, and she's good at it. But she decides she wants to break out. There's a series of events that kind of causes her to realize there's something else out there. And as she breaks out, she learns more and more about what's happened with the human race, what she represents in the whole scheme of things, and what's actually happened to the planet. And it's a lot of it is kind of a social commentary on things by primarily the writer Chris, who's my partner.
Right.
And that's like the collaborative part where he, the story is really all him, all the dialogue, the story, the characters, they're all his thought process, and he gives it to me in a script, just like you would a movie, and then I make it come to life, and he gives me pretty good flexibility with how everyone's going to look, the scenery, even the direction of it. So I get to kind of play like director, and as well as the actors and a lot of it's so it's fun like that. And there's a lot of elements to it.
Right.
So that's one of the what.
You've done a couple collaborations with Chris, right?
Yeah. That one's probably the main one that we've been working on for the longest time, and that was the one where like basically when I decided to make the career change, I talked to him, and that was the first thing we started to do, and right out of the gates, and it's been going really well. It's been the kind of the thing that I've been using as a building block too, to get my name out there, to get exposure, but we've done other things. We just recently came out with an anthology, and I guess you could say we worked together on it, but it was more of a collaboration amongst four different creators. It was me, Chris Calzia, Phil Jin, and Dylan, and we created this fictitious band. And it's funny, all of us except for Phil, we've been in a band together at different times. But, yeah, we created a fictitious band called the Wrong Magnetic Poles, and it was actually Phil's idea. And I met him at a comic convention. He's another artist, but he was like, I think it'd be cool to make an anthology where it's about we come up with a band, and we each come up with a story. But the stories, one story will be the stories will all surround a big concert that they're going to put on. And one story is the beginning of the concert, one story is the actual concert, and then another story is the end of the concert, or afterwards. Nice. And you have 3 different groups or creative teams, and they each make a segment, and we kind of put them together. We come up with the characters together, and then we make our own stories pretty independently. So like there was a couple of different ideas of how we were going to separate the different stories, but it wound up being Phil did one story, I did another story, and Chris, with a different artist, Dylan, did a whole story together. So while we worked together on the idea of the characters, the actual segments were still. This is like the first time I really made a comic where I wrote it and illustrated it too, but it was a shorter comic. So it's the end result is awesome. I mean, it really is we're comparing music with comics. And it just really felt the same way. There was that same collaborative feeling, with how these characters are going to be, who they are. We each kind of took one of the band members and we each kind of, I guess, planted the seed with it, but everyone kind of contributed at that point. And so we've got 3 characters: a drummer named Frog, and then a guitarist named Julian, and then a singer named Kieran. And so the stories are really different. Chris did this kind of more internal, a lot of kind of a lot of introspection.
Okay. Yeah.
And then mine is more of a surrealist kind of psychedelic trip, and then Phil did this more dreamy, heartfelt kind of story. So they're very different, but they mesh very well together, and I think that the ultimate creation is really fun and interesting to read. And that just became available on digitally. We didn't print it because we were going to print it for a comic convention that supposedly would have happened just like a couple weeks ago, but it didn't. So we just digitally published it on Comixology, which is
okay. So Comixology is that website?
Yeah, Comixology is it's owned by Amazon, but it's their comic book platform. So like speaking of comics online, it's like the place to get online comic books because they cater to like everything. So they've got everything from Spider-Man on it to small independent publications like what we do. And,
okay, cool. I'll put the link in the comments section.
Yes, because I have all of my books all my published books on it. Yeah, like you can either buy them physically through my website or you can get them digitally on Comixology. And
nice. DaveLawArt.com, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, cool. And so speaking of, conferences and conventions kind of closing down, your art form is actually pretty solitary, even though you can collaborate. And I know Chris does Chris still live in LA?
Yeah, he does.
Right, and you're in San Jose, so you guys have been able to collaborate being far apart anyways. Do you think the pandemic has affected the comic book industry at all?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's definitely how it's going to affect it. I've yet to see. Obviously,
I think we all are waiting. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously the immediate impact was kind of negative, as it is for everything, and because mostly they look at the physical sales of comic books, the comic book shops, and then also comic conventions, right? And all of those are having a really hard time. Although I did read a number that the sales numbers for comics, while they were down, weren't down by that much, surprisingly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would actually think that maybe even they might get a boost because people are stuck at home and wanting content. And so maybe people are searching it out and actually consuming more.
Yeah. And that's the kind of I think that's true. And even though most of these comic books shops are closed, to have the sales just be down a little bit is really promising. And then the fact that they had other reasonings for why that might be. Like there were some big releases last year at this time.
Okay.
So, that it might actually be kind of up comparatively, but there's that. And like I also realized that that a lot of content that people are used to, TV shows, those kinds of games, a lot of that stuff can't be happening during this time. Whereas a comic book can always be happening. You really just need a dude and a pencil, right? And I was kind of watching one of your other interviews. I'm forgetting her name.
Was that Ruth Morrison about animation?
Yeah, Ruth Morrison.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how, by the way, it's humbling listening to all your other interviews because all these people are so accomplished.
Who are you? By the way, actually, great time to plug the fact that you've done all the artwork for my blog, which I think is incredible. And for those people who have seen this artwork too, I didn't give you any direction, really. I just told you the topic of the blog, and you came up with these brilliant pieces of art. So you're very accomplished in my mind, and I'm very grateful to you for all of that artwork.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, just had to get that plug in there. But we're watching the animation.
Well, and I was listening to her talk about how in a lot of ways animation and comics are the same. Like she's talking about how with animation you can create anything you want. You don't have to worry about the cost of doing this like epic space battle or zero gravity or having this huge building explode. Like you can do all of that, and it doesn't cost any more than if you were going to have two people just talk in a room, right? And, but the difference between a comic book is you can change their outfits, you can change anything, you can change whatever you want, and that's very easy to do because like, your entire crew can be one person, or two people, and so I think that's one of the really great things about comic books, and the thing that will make it endure during this time is you can take away so much, and someone can still create a comic book for someone to be to get absorbed in and get pulled into another world with. So
yeah, absolutely. Do you think? Do you have? I mean, it might be too early to ask this question, but do you think the content that audiences like to read about is going to change after this? Because I know as a producer producing shows, I've said that I right now I only know how to produce something for a pre-pandemic audience, and I think the audience post-pandemic is going to change. What they are interested in viewing is going to change because now we're all adjusting to this paradigm shift of looking at the screen all day, and our tastes and our stories is going to change. So do you have any like pandemic stories in mind, or do you think your content might change to a different because the audience is going to change?
I do. I haven't really changed anything necessarily, but yeah, like science fiction is always like that. I mean, you can't just make science fiction the same throughout because it really has to. I think a truly successful story is one that kind of touches on the fibers of the things that we already know and understand, and some of the controversies or fears we have, and extrapolates on that. And so, like, if it's talking about our fear of, I don't know, like robots, which is something I do a lot of, that's still, I guess, there, but, like, there's different fears now, like, but
why? I mean, even robots themselves have evolved,
that is true. And you can always play on that. I guess, like, I was grasping at something that's kind of was a theme that isn't quite as much anymore, but I do think that the themes are going to change. I mean, pandemic, though, is oddly kind of a trope, is almost a little bit cliche in the science fiction world. So, yeah, I think it is going to change. I see myself not wanting to actually read or watch things that are really depressing about that kind of an angle right now.
Right, me too.
And so maybe there just won't be. It'll have to be a different kind of an angle. You can't always just be like, oh, it's a dystopian world where 90% of the population died off from a plague. It's just like, wow, it's a little too close to home right now, maybe.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know. I think it's going to be interesting to see where audiences' tastes go. Cool. So is there anything else you want to add or you want to plug before we go? Like, how can people support you? That's
definitely going to Comixology, going to my website, buying my books, downloading the books from Comixology, because all those things are really helpful. Or just, like following my Instagram or Facebook and sharing my posts. Those things are all helpful. Liking it, the likes, it seems silly. And I used to think like, oh, this is just obnoxious to have to keep clicking likes and likes and likes. But, for the working artist, if you have a friend who's like an artist, or creating something, it means so much. Like every time you get that like, or that post gets bumped up and more people wind up seeing it, it really does help. You see more people wind up buying the book. You see I get more inquiries to do commissions for people, to do projects for them. It's just so beneficial to someone, and you don't have to buy anything to really help out, a creative artist. Just helping them get that, if we're on the internet, we're obviously looking for inexpensive exposure, and the more you can help, that is always appreciated. Comments also are really always helpful, like that kind of boosts things going. So
nice. And you're at Dave Law Art, right?
DaveLawArt.com is my website, and then my Instagram is It's Dave Law. Which,
right, sorry, it's Dave Law. Yeah.
I chose that thinking it would be funny, but every time people are like, "Oh, what's your Instagram handle?" I'm like, "It's Dave Law," and they're like, "Oh, Dave Law," and I'm like, "No, it's Dave Law, ITS Dave Law," But
nice. But yeah, I'll second that emotion about actually clicking the like, because I talk to people all the time who are like, "Oh, I saw your post or I saw your video," and I'm like, "Well, you didn't like it. You're going to look at it. Just push the button." It really does make a difference. So
rest your fingers for the baby pictures or the cat pictures. They don't need the likes. You can rest the finger for that. But when it comes to like, you spent X amount of hours putting together this well thought out, article about, some like that,
Definitely. And so Instagram's kind of your main platform. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I spend the most time, mostly because I get the most feedback from it.
Right.
I think it would be like that with any kind of platform, but I get a lot of feedback from it. And at the moment, it's still something it helps me out a lot. It gives me a lot of instant feedback on what I'm doing. And I can hear what people like, what they don't like. And I've got a fair amount of business from it too. So, you can't complain about that.
No, I like Instagram, and I also like that you post things, work in progresses. I love the work in progress and kind of seeing it evolve. Yeah, so I think that's super cool to let us into your process like that.
I get. Yeah, it seems like a lot of people like that too. It's odd to see. It is really odd to see what people like. You think that you spent the whole day doing an image and you post it, and that's what people are going to want to see, but they want to see your hand in there painting it.
Or like it half colored.
I know they want to see it unfinished, but you know, that's cool. I don't mind. I think that that's great. You know, like I'm here to entertain however you want me to entertain you, I'll do it.
I like the finished products too. And you do commissions.
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of my business right now is creating comic books for other people, and there's a lot of people that they you know, in order to get noticed in the comic world, you have to have material done, and if you don't have if you know, publishers not paying you to work on something, you got to figure it out somehow. So there's a lot of writers that they can't draw, and so they need someone to bring their stories to life. And so that's actually really my business right now, and I love it. It's like, it's, you know, I almost kind of, you know, if it could pay as much as the other other way, I would love to just do it like this, because you get such a fun smattering of different ideas. And the one I'm working on right now is a comic that's going to be coming out called Thoughtscape 2319, and it's a real deep mind bender. It's a good one. I'm really excited about it. Yeah, you know,
science fiction. You're good at the science fiction stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, that's what I do a lot of. So I get a lot of people who want me to draw that. But yeah, this one I'm really excited about, and the writer I'm working on with is this guy Matt Mayor Lowery, and he wrote a book called
Terrible. I can put it in the
He's a really good writer. His writing style is awesome, and so I can't, like, the stuff we're putting out is I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to see it.
Great, exciting. Okay, well, and thank you again for all the artwork you've done for me, because I think it's incredible how you've captured me. You know, I think you've got a really great eye, and you're very detail's the wrong word, but you've got a soft touch, I think, in your artwork, and so it's really incredible. So thank you for joining me. This will be posted on YouTube, so you can share it. And this is part of my Another Way interview series, where I'm interviewing artists who are kind of finding their own way. So thank you for sharing your story with us, and we'll see you guys later. Take care.